And we're live. Welcome to Daily Confidence for Entrepreneurs. My name is Mustafa Hosseini, your host for the show. At Daily Confidence, we share tips, strategies, and actionable advice for you to boost your confidence around different areas of your business on a daily basis. As usual, we do giveaways throughout the show and after the show, and for you to enter the draw if you like, comment, subscribe, tag your friend who could benefit from the conversation that we're having, and or ask questions during the show. Pop them in the chat box, and we'll do our best to address that. Today, I've got an amazing guest, Dan LeFave. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Mustafa. Good to be here.
Great to have you. And we're talking about how to remove distraction, stay focused, and get things done better, which is one of my favorite topics. I like to get things done, remove distractions, and over the past year and a half with the pandemic, we tend to be very distracted, and our attention span is very, very low. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to our conversation. How's your day going, Dan?
It's going excellent. A lot of good things going on. Great conversations today.
So. Fantastic. So let me do the proper introduction with Dan, and then we're going to dive right into it. So Dan received life's second chance when he survived a severe car accident that took 3 lives. He struggled through brain injuries, business failures, heartbreaks, running marathons, and daily fights with fear and doubt. He is known as the 7-figure high-performance business coach because online entrepreneurs and agency owners hire him to establish self-managing businesses by upgrading their skill set, mindset, plus systems so that they can scale their business easier and faster. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Mustafa.
Great to see you. So where about are you, Dan?
I am just west of Toronto and in the heat. Got some good heat going on.
Pretty hot there right now?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's typically hot. We're surrounded by lakes, so.
Nice. What's the temperature like? Is it high 30s, 40s?
Yeah, it's almost 30. So,
All right.
Convert that to Fahrenheit, you're 90-ish.
90-ish. All right. I'm not a Fahrenheit guy. I'm a Celsius guy. So yeah, it's been pretty hot over this. It's been a good summer so far. I mean, Calgary, Alberta. So it's been good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Dan, what is your story?
Well, I started, at least, when I started when I was a kid, I worked in the family business. My dad was a butcher, so he opened a meat shop, not just, it doesn't just happen that way, but that's what he did, right? So I started off being somewhat of a, son of an entrepreneur at a young age, although he was an owner operator, and literally, we did open a couple of shops, but you know what, that was, I think, the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. And later on, I ended up starting a student painting business right at the university. They solicited us, though. They said, "Hey, come and start this business. You're an entrepreneur." And I was even VP communications for an entrepreneurial organization at university. Anyway, I just dove right in, and I started that business. Didn't really succeed that much. I broke even more or less, but from there, I ended up going into corporate and didn't like that. I was there maybe a year or so or whatever. And then my brother was starting a business, and we started talking, and he had built it up to maybe $200,000. And I jumped on board with him, and it was a construction business for wireless telecom. Ended up working in the field at first, sprained my thumb within the first week or so. And not intentionally, but I sprained my thumb, and I ended up in the office, and I ended up running that business with him, and we took it to 7 figures in a few years. But then we weren't seeing eye to eye, so I ended up getting recruited. I got a project management position for a $25 million project. I ended up doing real estate negotiations for another wireless telecom company, and then I ended up doing real estate for the largest landlord in Canada, and residential landlord. But I did the commercial real estate for them. But you know what? All that was happening, and I was doing well, and I was making lots of progress, and CFOs and so on were, giving me all sorts of accolades and so on, but just wasn't working for me. And so I ended up taking a parental leave, which was phenomenal. I had 36 weeks. And I was off on this parental leave, and I was thinking about going back. I'm like, what am I doing? What am I going back to? The commute, the hours, the demands, all that. But, is that really for me? And then I ended up going back reluctantly, and I got recruited afterwards because I didn't even want to be there. I went to this other company. They paid me more, and gave me a director position and all this. But then it hit me, and it actually was perfect timing. They called me in on the 90th day and said, probationary period's here and you're done. You're fired. And it was the first time in my life, first time ever, but that kick was what I needed. That was just, the kick in the butt I needed. I basically started doing some soul searching. I'm great at, saving money. So I didn't need to go and get another job, and I wasn't willing to, but I ended up doing a bunch of soul searching. It led me to jumping into a business that I didn't really even like. It was multi-level marketing, but I did it because I said a prayer, and a friend of mine, a friend's father answered, and the next day he answered that prayer. And I went on a 6-month journey of trying to figure that out. But then a good friend of mine gave me Augmendino's work, the 10 scrolls. I ended up studying and reading those scrolls every single day. That led me to learning about Augmendino. That led me to look up Dave Blanchard, who's the CEO of Augmendino Corporation. And I was flying into Salt Lake City to go to an event in Provo, Utah. I ended up finding out where Dave Blanchard lived. He's he's around Salt Lake City. I ended up emailing him and said, "Can we have a coffee?" And he said, "Well, when do you fly in and out?" And I told him, and he said, "Come and stay at my house." I was like, all right. And then that was where the coaching seed was planted. At the end of that evening, we said a few things, and I asked him, show me where you work and do your magic in your office. And we talked, and he said, Dan, I think you'd make a great coach. And so I went home with that thought in my mind. And then a friend of mine was studying Bob Proctor's stuff. I bought all of his courses. And then she said, next time she says, well, why don't you talk to his team? And then I get on the phone with his team. And within 20 minutes, he says, well, let's get Bob on the phone. I'm like, I don't know who Bob Proctor is. So sure, why not? And so that evening, I remember I went to a meeting for that multi-level marketing company. And then soon after, I was on a call with Bob, and he sold me on becoming a coach. He said, the impact you can have and things you can do, you can teach. I was studying Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra. I studied all these great leaders through their books. But then I was being given an opportunity to get coached by one of the best guys. I found out he was, Bob Proctor is pretty big, and one of the best guys, teaches program. And so I said yes, but then I did that for a few years, and then I started learning my own things, set up my own system, wrote my own book, co-authored books with Jack Canfield, Dennis Waitley, and Deepak Chopra, and I just kept stepping forward and saying yes, 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 and today I have my own programs, my own systems, my own coaching, and clients all over the world. And so that's been my journey. But it was all about saying yes. I said yes, almost everything. It felt scary.
Love it. We have some things in common here. I started a painting company when I was in school, and it didn't last long. We basically got wiped out with the crash of 2008 when I was going to school. And I was actually listening to Bob Proctor this very morning as I was driving around. I love him. He's really good. I love the stuff that his personality and what he's done. And I think we both read most of this stuff, all the greats and all the leaders out there.
Yeah. Yeah, he's an amazing teacher. I grasped everything I could, hung out with him, went to his house, had all sorts of great interactions with him. But
to Bob Proctor's house?
Oh yes, yeah.
Out in Toronto?
Yeah, he's not too far away. So well, that was one of the first things he said. He said, "Get started, learn my system, get certified, and come and see me in a few months." And so we did that. My wife and I went over, and we had 3 hours in his backyard sipping tea and taking lots of notes. So,
he's a great guy. I just love his energy. The guy's like, is he 87 now?
Somewhere there, yeah.
Somewhere there. And he's like, he has more energy than a lot of 20-year-olds that I know.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Actually, this morning I saw him speak for like a good hour on YouTube. And I follow him. He's a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's amazing. So what do you do now, and who do you serve?
My business is coaching. So I do business coaching, and I serve entrepreneurs that are scaling to 7 million or more, 7+ figures. So they have existing businesses. It's profitable. They have a small team of people, and they need to make some changes to scale. So they're doing roughly around $500,000. They've tried lots of things. They've struggled. They're not coming to me. I'm not the first person to help them. I just can't be. I know that if they came to me and I started giving them the tasks they had to do, they would probably say, no, I'm not ready for that. They need to have struggled, hit bottlenecks, and just, really frustrated, huge frustration, high motivation, and they want to scale because they want something more. They typically want more freedom, and they just don't know what to do to get it. They're operating their business. They just don't realize. and
Interesting.
They're stuck in that cycle of operating and micromanaging and watching over people and making sure everything is done right without getting the right team. And until they get a self-managing team, they will not be able to carve out time for themselves, for their family, and it'll be this 12 to 16 hour cycle of working every day, and it's exhausting.
Absolutely. Is there any specific industry that you prefer to work with?
Well, it's online entrepreneurs. They're more like I'm well versed in that. I've studied a lot of marketing and online business, so I understand that intimately, and also digital agency owners. And I didn't even choose that group really. It just I looked historically back at who I was serving, and I was like, well, there's a lot of agency owners in my environment, and and people that are super action oriented really work well. So the industry is agency owners and online entrepreneurs, but also people that are really action oriented. And I call, there's people that are categorized as fire signs, Sagittarius, Aries, and Leos. Just historically, they are super action oriented. I don't have to push them. I can give them the guidance. They take the steps. We climb the mountain together, and they get the results they want.
Love it. So online entrepreneurs, digital agency owners, and that the people that are just mainly working online.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
What do you find is the biggest problem for entrepreneurs when they're trying to gain momentum in their business? What are some of the issues they're experiencing?
Well, there's tons of distractions, and that's what we're talking about today, avoiding that. Because here's the thing, there's 3 parts, and you talk about the confidence, right? So before we gain confidence, what do? Well, we take a lot of action. So that's you have to basically take tons of action, test, try things, right? So so that's the first step that you have to do. I mean, the confidence is eventually going to build into courage. And so there's these 3 steps. So comprehension is what we need. So we need to take a lot of action, try things, test things, be bold, be brave, right? And so how can you do that if you're distracted all the time? And guess what? We know through research that people are distracted most of the time. In fact, we're mostly habitual, like about 90% habit now. So if you think about 10% of your day, and not all in one chunk, so not a few hours, usually it's little bits here and there of time. So unless you can get inside of that gap, and I call it the habit gap, and do some actions, do some creativity, do something that's going to move your business forward, then it's nothing but habits and distraction. So what do people do when they have free time? Pick up the phone. Right? This thing's got to have something in it that's going to keep me motivated and excited and get my dopamine going, So that's unfortunately where people go. But if you can just program things into that time where you can do some learning or do something that's advantageous for your business.
Yeah,
that's not just a busyness, because that's what people do. They just keep busy. And if you ask them, hey, how's your life? Oh, crazy busy. Well, why? It doesn't have to be. How about blocking off chunks of time for yourself? Early in the morning is really, really good. Morning routine, I wouldn't trade that for anything. And anybody who has one knows the value of that. Because if you're going to take some heat during the day, you might as well start it by applying it to yourself in the morning. Get some exercise, something in, So
good. So just to recap, what would you say are the biggest problems when it comes to the momentum? The free time that they don't manage well, and then.
Well, it's distraction. There's so much that is distracting us.
Okay.
Fortunately, I learned that early on. So if my phone does anything right now, it'll be a phone call or text message, and that's it. So if it's urgent, that's how I get notified. Otherwise, every other notification, pop up, everything shut off, like off. And people know how to reach me. My voice message says I check messages a couple times a day, but if this is urgent, text me. Then they have to decide how urgent is that matter, right?
Absolutely.
So it's just removing that little bit of distraction. That can, like, every client I work with, they get back time right away, like an hour a day or 2 hours or 10 hours a week. And like right away, we find time, because time is our greatest commodity. So what are we doing with it? How are we using it? And, we only control what, comes between birth and death. So, what are we doing with that? And
absolutely,
distraction is there all the time. There's going to be lots of things. I mean, if you have family like you and I do, right? Things come up, or they ask you something, or can you open this jar of sauce or something, all sorts of little distractions. And if you start adding up that time, it can become pretty big. And then you realize, hey, my time's just being poured out everywhere. I don't really have any time where I do things that are constructive for my business, the business building aspect, the business development, because nobody can grow a business unless they do the development.
Absolutely.
If they're caught in the cycle of operating it, that's an owner operator. That's not an entrepreneur. There's a great distinction.
Do you feel that since the pandemic has started, people's distraction levels have gone up?
Yes, and I'll explain why. And again, I'll explain the brain science behind it. So when this situation hit, everybody sort of went into shock mode. I mean, I went to Costco and I basically lined up for hours trying to get food, but everybody went into this me first mentality. Yeah, like everybody go shop and get food, stock up. We don't know how long this is going to last.
Toilet papers,
stay clean, toilet paper. Like that was really hilarious at one point. But here's the thing: everybody went into what's called survival mode. So they went into their survival instinct, which is me first. I'll jump out in front of you on the road in my car. Why? Because me first. I'll butt in front of you in line. Me first. It's just people went into that state, and it's normal. It's just natural and normal for us to do that. So they went into that state, and then they also, started feeding themselves information, trying to look for solutions and so on. But here's the real key. Everybody got really emotional. So as emotions were getting bigger and more challenging, intelligence goes down. Emotions up, intelligence down. So guess what? Now it's like, what am I going to do? What do I'm not going to an office anymore, or I'm not leaving my house and meeting people, and I don't have all these other distractions. I have all this extra time. So what do? I fill it with something, So what do they fill it with? Entertainment. Well, what's the easiest entertainment out there? It's a device full of information, or it's the refrigerator in the pantry, right? So, so everybody got distracted with those things. And then you hear things like the COVID-15. I'm like, what's that? Right? Because I don't get it. I'm like, I fast, I fast from morning to night. And so between evening and breakfast, like I have no clue what that 15, I thought maybe are they taking off 15 pounds? Maybe they're not eating, but no, it was putting on 15 pounds, and I just couldn't relate to it. I was just like, what do we need that for? But that was going on. Emotions went really sky high. Intelligence went down. Distraction, boom, front and center. Devices, entertainment, food, all those things, right? And people just totally got gobbled up into that, and you can see it now, and they're all outside trying to run it off now.
Absolutely. What are your couple of your go-to tips to reduce distractions these days? Because I find myself that my own attention span is severely down. Like, I find myself jumping around too much because I've been in front of a computer for way too long. And what are your some tips for that the listeners or people that are watching could take and start applying today to reduce distractions?
Mhm. Well, first thing everybody should do is do what I was saying earlier, which is shut off all those notifications, like shut off all the notifications and then write down one or two that you actually need to pay attention to, things that
Hmm.
are critical to your life and your business. Some people, it might be email because they need to see when things come in and it's timely. There's a time frame that they need to respond by or something. If it's somebody saying, "Hey, I'd like to have a chat with you," and you respond next day, they might be saying, "Oh, I found somebody else." So, but first of all, get all that turned off. Turn it off, and then figure out what are the one or two things that are essentials to leave on, and that's it.
Yeah.
The other thing is to plan your day in advance, not
Okay.
just like a to-do list, like a long laundry list. No,
Yep.
just three things that are going to move your business forward. They could be income driven, they could be impact or influence driven. Those are the three categories that you can assess based on your business where you are. If you need to generate income, then make sure those actions are going to lead to you earning income. And also, you should have something in there for your health and well-being. So three things that you will do, up to three, that you will do for yourself, for your health and well-being, and then for your relationships, whether it's family or friends or whatever it might be. So you have that social aspect. Just three things per day, but do them the night before. And the reason being is not because you'll hit the ground running, but that's one reason. The other reason is as you sleep, your conscious mind shuts off, subconscious mind turns on. Now it has something to marinate and percolate on. Otherwise, it's going to take whatever the day's activities were and just put that into a dream and spew something out, a movie in your mind. So the day before, plan it, set those objectives. And I'm going to give a tool, which we've talked about, and I'm going to give a tool which will help you do that. Because if you don't corner yourself and do those things, guess what? Distraction creeps in. You don't get things done. You don't develop the confidence, and then the courage, and your life in the business just stays the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's, I think, the critical things. Plan it, but then do a morning review of what your intentions are, and even if you're open to it, speak out loud what you want in terms of those intentions. Just talk about what you want
for the day.
Yeah, for your day. And it could be, let's say I'm writing a book. Say, okay, I'm going to sit down today. I got a block of time at 1 p.m. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do the writing of my book. It's going to be clear and crisp. My mind's going to be fresh and alert, and I'm going to get that done, and it's going to be awesome. I'm going to write, maybe 1,000 words or more, and I'm going to wrap it up at 2, and I'll be done. Boom. You programmed your mind for the potential, and you go and do it and get it done.
All right, so let me do a recap on what you just explained. First of all, turn off the push notification on your phone, because that's the number one distraction. What I do personally is actually put my phone on silent. So when I'm working, because it's always dinging and making noise and pop-ups and all that, that's a very big distraction. What I also loved about you mentioned that we should plan for the day coming the night before and going to sleep with those three things in mind. Is like, again, as you mentioned, our brain working on it overnight. So when we get up in the morning, we know what we want. And the fact that we know what we want gives us that confidence, because confidence is comes with a part of what am I trying to say here? Knowing what we want to do gives us confidence. It's the lack of knowing what we want to do or what we need to do that cuts down our confidence, because we're in no man's land, basically, right? So I really love that advice of reduce the distraction of your phone by turning off your notifications, and then plan the night before and have your mind work on it while you sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Can you touch quickly on some people think our brain doesn't work when we're sleeping, and so can you give us the little rundown on how that works?
Well, let's just qualify that for a second. So if it wasn't working, we would die. So basically, all of our automatic systems, our breathing, our eyes blinking, our digestion, all that stuff is all done by the hard drive in our mind, which is known as the subconscious mind. It's running. It's a hard drive. It's like a huge engine room and information system. It's running everything, and so it's always running. And in fact, research has shown that 96 to 98% of our results behaviors, and actions are originated in that part of our mind, in that hard drive. Everything else is conscious, which is based on what we're seeing. It's based on our senses. So here's what happens at night, though. What happens is we go unconscious. So our conscious mind basically shuts off. So the noise is not there anymore, thank God. So then our subconscious mind can do the work. It can rejuvenate us, or we might have a dream that's that's kind of a fantasy or something that gives us some insight or something valuable, bit of information. I think dreams are always providing us information. So, and I remember all of them. You just have to train yourself to wake up and refresh your mind.
Really?
Yeah. It's not that hard. I mean, at first it was a question of waking up, and then something would be there. It's just lingering, and you have to you just say to yourself, remember. You close your eyes, remember, and just say those words, and then that dream will pop in, and you replay it. Sometimes you write it down. You're like, what was that all about? What did I need to know that for? And ask some questions around it. So yeah, definitely our subconscious mind. I mean, it is hard drive. We wouldn't run our computer on RAM memory, yet we try to run our lives on it. But our hard drive is really running the show. It's all of our beliefs, our habits, our experiences, all those things all balled into one. It has power, but no direction. So that's why when you give it direction at night, it can do something in the morning. You hit the ground. Sometimes you wake up. Sometimes I wake up at 3 or 4 and I'm like, man, my mind's buzzing. And whatever that thing was needs to be poured out someplace. So I put it down, I record it, or, just speak it or record it, put it in text or write it down. And then I get to it the next day. And
love it.
Yeah.
Love it. What about time management? I mean, a lot of us over the past year and a half, I mean, we were poor time managers to begin with, and then the pandemic hit us. And now we are dealing with stress. We're dealing with staying at home. I mean, it's slowly getting back to normal, but it's still, I mean, we're still in the pandemic. And not seeing our people, not doing the normal life. And I don't think we're doing a great job of managing our time with business owners. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes that we're doing with respect to time management for business owners, maybe specifically?
Well, I don't think most business owners are using it objectively. They're not thinking broadly about, what do I need to accomplish and by when, and then having a plan and tracking their actions. I don't think anybody does that, hardly. There's probably a tiny percentage of people that do. So basically, nobody's treating time like a commodity. Like, I mean, if we did, we would really be, concerned about somebody knocking on our door that if we go answer it, they're going to take up 5 minutes of our time trying to explain something that we don't even need. So don't answer, right? That's just time wasted. So, I mean, if you think about it, if somebody's watching 2 hours of television every single evening, 5 days a week, let's say, that's 10 hours of time that could be used for something else. I had a client like that, and she's like, well, I don't have any spare time. And I said, well, what do you do in the evening? 2 hours of TV. I'm like, well, that's 10 hours a week. Can you cut that out? Is it valuable? What are you learning? Is there any education in that? No, it's just pure entertainment. And I said, well, do you need it? No. Okay, there's 10 hours. We got just right away. Boom. And so, the management of time, I mean, we don't manage time per se, we manage our actions. So it's a question of what actions are we going to take that are going to produce the results that we're looking for. And it's very clear when we take actions that are frustrating and aggravating and don't produce the kind of results that we're looking for. And we know it. I had one client that was devoting 10%. She had 10% of her revenue coming in that was taking up probably 80% of her time in her business. And right away, I just said, okay, well, can you drop that off? Because as soon as you drop that, you can make more space for the types of clients you want and income, and the frustration just disappears. Yes. I'm like, well, let's get rid of it. Dump it. It's like, so people don't think like in terms of time being a commodity and our actions compounding. Like those are two counterintuitive ways of thinking. Our thoughts are compounding, our actions are compounding. So if every day we wrote for 15 minutes, you could theoretically have an ebook, a 10 to 15,000 page or a word ebook, not page, 10 to 15,000 word ebook in a matter of months or weeks, just by writing incrementally. We don't realize the value of those tiny little actions. We think that we need to sit down and really pour, a whole weekend and crash course. And
Oh yeah. Have the stars align, perfect weather, my cup of coffee, sitting by the beach, the breeze from the ocean coming in, and that's the perfect moment where I start writing. And that just never happens.
And if you're on the beach, somebody goes by and does something, and you get, they're kite surfing. Oh, that's cool. And then you're distracted, and you're off on that tangent. Maybe I can go talk to them about kite surfing.
I have to wait for a moment of silence again for another 6 months.
There we go. Yeah. So, so it's about limiting and constricting. That's what it is. And it's not. Right. It's not about making your life difficult, or it's just about limiting and constricting so that you give yourself no way out. So that if you say, I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to write this book, or I'm going to create this program, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to give it some focused attention over a certain period of time and measure that each and every week and look at the evidence. I mean, here's the thing. If we set our objectives, take action, look for evidence, guess what? We'll end up feeling good because we took action and we got some things done. We're not going to beat ourselves up. We'll see it like it's literally there in front of us. So we will see the results. And when we see the results, we feel good. Guess what? That's just thought. Good feelings are just thoughts moving through our bodies. We're like, oh, that was really good. I got 1,000 words done. Amazing. I'm 1/10 of the way there. Boom, right? And if you have accountability built in, even better, because somebody else is going to pat your back even more so than you would, because we just don't do that very well for ourselves.
Absolutely. I love a few points that you mentioned there. One was the daily incremental action of, say, 100 words a day. Is that what you mentioned, or 1,000 words?
Oh, I don't know. 1,000 words sounds like
even if you do 100 words a day. I mean, the daily incremental actions, like over time, it adds up. Mm-hmm. Right. And my example is my kid is 5 years old and I give him $10 a week. Mm-hmm. Right. It adds up really quick. The kid shows up one day and he has like a couple of $100 in his jar. And he's like, Dad, I'm going to buy a bicycle with this. I'm like, wow, that added up really quick. And it's only $10 a week. And we don't really give enough credit to, or we think it's too small. But when we do it consistently, like you said, on a daily basis, a small amount, over a span of a month or two, like we have a book.
It compounds. Right? That's the whole thing. It compounds. And people don't realize the value of compounded effort, compounded actions, and compounded thoughts, even deeper, right? Our thoughts will compound. Like I use this as an example, which let's say you're talking with your wife and you're like, hey, let's go for dinner, right? And it's the beginning of the week, but you're going on the weekend. So you start talking about, this is the way I approach it. I say, well, where don't you want to go? What food don't you want? I always do the process of elimination. So you ask the question of what don't you want? And then you start narrowing that down. You figure out what it is. And then, at least for the woman more so than the man, she's probably going to think what I'm going to wear and how I'm going to do my hair and all this kind of stuff. And the kids need a babysitter or whatever. All these kinds of thoughts start coming in. Those are compounded thoughts. Eventually you end up at the restaurant. The child is with a babysitter and you're enjoying yourself. And you got the result you wanted. But those were thoughts compounded. We don't think of everything like that, but it's exactly that way. We need to put the attention into the thoughts that we want, and then they will compound. I think thoughts are our greatest currency besides time. I think, well, we don't control time, but our greatest currency to manage time is to manage our thoughts.
Love it. Can you expand on that more? Tell us what you mean.
Certainly. Well, again, I'm the topic here is that thoughts compound, and it's a currency. It's an investment. So no matter what, we can always connect the dots looking backwards in our lives. And so if we could connect the points of, let's say the biggest milestones, we'll realize that the thoughts, the meetings, the conversations, the bits of information, the courses have all led up to that. We can't argue with that, right? So ultimately, everything starts with a thought. Like if you're sitting on a chair, somebody in the woods one day was like, hey, we should turn that stump into something a little bit cleaner and more versatile. It's pretty heavy to carry around, right? So that's where it starts. Everything starts with a thought. So why don't we manage our thoughts better and focus them in on what we want? And when we do that, then we'll look back at how they compounded and added up to the results that we got. I mean, if we got a bad result, then we should look back to the things we're doing and our thoughts that we're having and the kinds of things we were saying. If we can tune into that, then we can realize how powerful our thoughts are, and they are most valuable currency. I mean, it's written everywhere. Thoughts become things. There's a lot of sayings out there that Emerson and the Bible and all these places, that thoughts become things. And when we get more control over that, man, life can really look a lot better, and things can get a lot better.
Absolutely. Speaking of staying focused, which is, I think, a big problem always, what are some of the myths around staying focused? And what are some of the mistakes that business owners are making about and around staying focused?
Well, you know what? Here's where the problem originates. And unfortunately, this is not an indictment against the school system. It's just that it's not taught in school. The teacher says, face front, pay attention. And you're like, yeah, okay, I better be obedient. Otherwise, I'm going to be humiliated. But it's not taught how to focus. So then what do you go out in your life and you're doing things, and that's why the water cooler joke is so potent, so meaningful, because people hang around the water cooler talking and wasting time, and right, and they're not focused, right? They're bored. So what happens? So that's the core thing. Boredom is the antithesis to focus. People get bored. Why? Challenge is too high or challenge is too low. That's usually what it is, right? It's like, oh, this is really difficult. Okay. Got to be something in the pantry that'll, solve that. Taste buds, right? I can eat my emotions. I can eat my problem away, right? And then I don't have to focus on this thing that I don't know how to do. So that's when the challenge is too high. When the challenge is too low, you're like, oh my God, accounting, if I have to sit here anymore and type these numbers in or whatever, or look at this stuff and these spreadsheets, I'm going to tear my hair out. Again, challenge too low. Boredom kicks in, focus is gone, boom, off on a distraction path that you may not come back on. It's like, whoa, how many hours was that on Tony Robbins videos, right? Right. 3 hours, boom, gone, can't get it back. Right? Focus is lost.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Dan, can you tell us about your gift, the productivity system?
Absolutely. Well, this focus productivity system, I will give full credit to the folks that wrote the book, The 12-Week Year. I studied that book. I read it 30 times and really went deep on it.
Did you really read it 30 times?
Absolutely. There's somebody who lives in your area. He and I have been reading like this. We read a book like this by studying it and reading a chapter every month, the same one for the 30 days. And we study books like this. We've been doing for 10 years now. And so we're nonstop. We're unstoppable. On the 31st day, we do a review of the book and summarize that on Zoom and share that out with our folks. But yeah, we read it 30 times. And see, because this is an information center, we're putting this information in about 12-week year and being focused and productive and all this. So we're putting it in, putting it. We keep putting it in. Guess what? I started wondering, well, I need to apply this. It's too good to not. So I went looking around. I found a sample that somebody had created based on what they learned in the book. I took it. I created a mastermind with somebody else. They improved it. I joined, and then I moved into another mastermind, and they improved it, and it kept getting improved all the way along until now. We have a nice big dashboard, and we can see performance. You can see where your health and well-being is versus your relationships versus your business, or your career. And so it's a system that I call a distraction removal machine, and it is also a procrastination killer. Because you don't. Here's the thing: we know through science and psychology that people hate humiliation. They don't want to be humiliated. It's almost as big as fear, right? Or fear of death, right? It's there. So guess what? This system has accountability built in. So you set your intentions, you choose the actions that you're going to take, only actions that you control, because anything else can't be done 100%. So it has to be 100% owned by you. And those are the actions that you're going to take. They're specific to a date and time. And as long as you took them, you can mark them done. And then every week you have that accountability call, and you have to show up and discuss why certain things weren't done. And then that's where the evidence is. So if Tony Robbins messed somebody up and they went and watched a bunch of his videos, they're going to put that in their notes. That's going to be a comment. Got distracted, watched Tony Robbins videos, didn't do my task. Okay, good. So then now we know what's breaking down, what's not working, so that we can fix it. Okay, so what got you on Tony Robbins videos? Well, I went off on Facebook, and then I saw something. Okay, well, great. Now we know what to do. Facebook is off permanently, unless you need to go on there and share something, right? So there's fixes. You can have fixes. So this system is all about cornering yourself and doing specific actions over a week, measuring performance, looking for evidence, finding the breakdowns, having accountability built in, somebody who will tell you the truth. I mean, the truth is really powerful, but it's painful at first, but and it will piss you off. but once you know the truth about what you're doing and your actions, and you can see your performance, then you can make some little course corrections. So we need that, because if you look at, let's say, any athlete, Olympic athlete, Michael Phelps, we can see his stats, right? We could look at all the history of his stats. And in fact, he won those gold medals in practice. He just had to show up and do the same thing at a competition.
Again
right?
and again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So it was all about the practice. But we can see all the stats for his practice. We can see all the stats of his competitions, and we can see all the stats that led him to the gold medals. We can
Is
look
this
at all
public
that.
information?
Well, I don't know, but I'm just saying, if, let's say, I've had access to it, I know his coach or something. If I knew his coach, then I can see that, right? So let's say we had all that data. We can definitely connect the dots. We can see, well, it's no wonder, like there's no question. Unless this guy went, on a drinking binge and became an alcoholic, he couldn't have screwed up his career, right? So all that tells the truth, right? No stats, no results. We don't, we need to measure our performance and see what we're doing. Otherwise, we lie to ourselves. We're really good at that, because, we don't want to own up to things. People who go to weight loss. I've had people that owned weight loss clinics, and they said, the person would look themselves in the mirror and say, well, not so bad, only 75 pounds extra, could be worse, or it was worse before, or whatever. So this is a lie detector. It's a way to tell the truth and get things done and measure performance. I'll just add to this. I'm not just putting this out there and saying, hey, try it. It's been used. I've seen clients go from 12 to 16 hours a day, working 6 days a week, to 3 hours a day and bored, not knowing what to do, right? And then that's the opportunity for business development right there. But 12 to 16 hours, there was a lot of other things done in there, though, team building and setting up systems and standards for her team and herself. And so, but that, once we did all that work, plus use the system, she ended up going down to 3 hours and a little bit bored. And I've seen other people go from a few $1,000s a month in income to $25,000 in about 6 months, which seems like it's really a stretch, but guess what? Everything was dialed in. Everything, the focus, the clarity, the actions, measuring performance, owning up to their actions or inactions, and making little course corrections. I mean, if you think about it, if you set up conditions that are going to help you get the results, you set yourself up to win. You can't lose. Like that's, it's either play to win or play not to lose, right? not using the system, I think, is playing not to lose. When you play not to lose, you stand a chance of losing because you're kind of on the fence. But when you play to win, right, then it's all about what are you going to do? What actions are you taking? Own up to your inactions or inadequacies and make little adjustments. And as you make those little course corrections, then you become a better version of yourself and you end up living a better life. You feel good about it. You tell people about it, and it ends up becoming your new narrative, which is ultimately what you need. You need a new narrative for your life. Otherwise, what do? You compare yourself against your self. Right?
Yep. So again, if you're watching or listening to get Dan's gift, the Focus Productivity System, go to lefavecoaching.com/focus day. And I'm going to spell it out. LeFave Coaching is LEFAV as in Vector, coaching.com/focus days with an S at the end. So LEFAVE coaching.com/focus days.
And just imagine turning distraction into discipline, like, turning distraction into discipline focus. That's what this system does, if you're willing to do the work.
Love it. Now, gang, if you want a working, effective system that will help you achieve what you would normally achieve in a year and you want to do it in 3 months, go to this Focus Productivity System, download Dan's gift here, get access to it, reach out to Dan, and he obviously knows what he's doing. I mean, if once you read a book and read a system and study for 30 times, I'm guessing you would know what you're doing. I mean, people glance at something and they think they know it and they start claiming all sorts of things. But once you read a system and study for 30 times, you would know it all inside out. So my suggestion, download the Focus Productivity System. Go on lefavecoaching.com/focus days. So, Dan, can I ask you some personal questions?
Go ahead.
What's one new thing that you tried recently?
One new thing. Well, wouldn't it be fasting? Because I've been doing that for a while now. I guess you could say this is new. So I'm a big fan of consistent and persistent practice. So I think differently from the average person. So I decided that I wanted to build my muscles in my body in a certain way. So I started doing some research, and you know what? Prior to that, I was doing push-ups anyway, and I just do a push-up for every lap I went around the sun. Every year I've been alive, and so I just make it a little objective that way. But lately, I decided to implement, what this guy's cut that was on this video on this YouTube video. I said, okay, I'm going to do what he's doing, right? And then he gives us these exercises which are pretty challenging, right? And I didn't add on any more to what I'm doing, but I'm just doing them differently, and so I'm definitely feeling it now. Like when I do his, I basically do the 2 parts that he shared with respect to push-ups, and then I do my own. And then when I get to do my own, I'm like, oh my God, last one. So, so that's the way I am. Like, so my morning ritual is very dialed in. Like I get up and I do a meditation. I go for a walk in nature. I get on a spin bike, and so everything. So this is all very dialed in. But yeah, I just started doing this recently. And I'm all about stretching myself because I know that if I can take the heat and do things physically, I sure as heck can take the heat when I do things mentally or emotionally in the world much better. That's just the way I approach it. So I will push myself physically in these instances. And so that's something that I've been doing lately that's new. And I definitely, when you feel it, you know it, right? Your muscles are saying,
got it. Fantastic. Now, what are your top 2 or 3 favorite books that have made a massive difference in your life or business?
Okay. Well, I'm going to go to 3 because there are so many, but I'm going to name some that people might not even recognize. But when you hear the kinds of people that have read them, like Michael Phelps read The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. That was one of the Bob Proctor's highly recommended books. So The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, Dr. Joseph Murphy. The last Olympics Phelps went to was, based on that. There's also Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. That book wasn't published until 2011. He wrote it in the 1930s. The whole family feared putting that book out because they thought they were going to get slaughtered by the government or the school system or the religious factions, right? So there's that one. And then another one is called Working with the Law by Raymond Hollywell. That's all about working with universal laws, not gravity and so on, not the typical ones, reciprocity, compensation, things that are intangible that we don't think about too much. So those books, I've read them all 30 times. So I know them intimately. And but that, I would say those are the top three.
So I have listened to a lot of Joseph Murphy's tapes, and I've listened to actually recently fairly on YouTube. The guy is pure gold. You've got to check this out. Outwitting the Devil, great book. I think I started but haven't finished. But get this, Working with the Law is a book that I have read I've probably read it 7, 8, or 9 times. And it's the one book that I have gifted the most with Raymond Hollywell. And I've got the suggestion from Bob Proctor.
Yeah. These are short
books.
Those are The Power of the Subconscious Mind and Working with Law, very short books, but super
my God,
powerful.
Beautiful books.
Yeah, like highlight, take notes. Don't just flip through it. Don't scan it. Study it. Yeah,
like there are 2 books that I've read that I've got high on the information that I was reading.
Mm-hmm.
Working with the Law was one of them. When I was reading it, I was like, this is so good. I want to fly. It's amazing. And I've read it multiple times.
Yeah.
Obviously not as much as you, it seems like it, but it's like one of those books where reading it once is just doesn't do the justice to. We need to digest it. We need to discuss it, and the rest of it. Amazing. Love it. But the suggestions were Power of Subconscious Mind with Joseph Murphy, Outwitting the Devil with Napoleon Hill, and Working with the Law with Raymond Hollywell. So next question. If you had a digital ad, like on Facebook or Google, where you had a message for people of Earth and everyone could see your message online or your ad online, what would your message be?
That's a good question. Well, as much as I think that time and thoughts matter, I think it would be conscious awareness. Just, the message would be about developing greater conscious awareness, only because we have so much power. We have so much power in our mind. We're living 2 lives, the one that we're living and the one we're capable of living. Most people aren't focusing on the one they're capable of living so much, though, because they just look at their past and reflect on that. But I think if we just had a slight bit of conscious awareness and, become alert and aware of what we're doing, our environment around us, because I think life isn't happening to us. I think it's responding to us. And we should look at the responses we're getting. If we don't like those responses, well, heck, we got to go back in here and rearrange this. Rearrange the mental furniture because it's not quite aligned, right? There's something out of order. And most people don't operate, or update their operating system. They don't. And that's where conscious awareness, doing some learning, just dialing a little bit in and seeing the power and potential of this thing. I mean, if it's 96, 98% of our results, behaviors, and actions, heck, let's give it a little more time and attention, right? It just doesn't take much.
Absolutely. All right. So what's one advice that made a massive change in your life or business?
One piece of advice. Let me think about that just for a second. And I guess it could be from a book or it could be from anybody or anything, right? So
yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that I received from a friend was, and this is somebody that, not obviously, but somebody who understands how the mind works and affirmations and repetition and so on, but is to really focus on what you want, like not just kind of carelessly, like, oh, I hope so, or something, not just wondering and guessing, but it's focusing on what you want. And if you want to take that a level deeper, like I was saying earlier, talk about what you want, like speak it out loud. You might as well look at your list for the day of the things you want. And let's say even if it involves somebody else, And I do this. It's a practice. I just say, hey, Lacey, I sent you that message. You got the information. I want an email response back from you today, letting me know what you want to do as the next step. That's a want, right? Clear. And then if I have something for myself, it could be, okay, today we're going to sit down. We have that block of time, 1 o'clock. We're going to be working on this program, and we're going to dial in and take these 3 steps that we've carved out here. And that's it. Very clear, talking it out, because we're talking to ourselves anyway. We might as well just say it out loud so we can hear ourselves.
Love it. Love it. Now, real quick, if I have no clue what I want, what's the fastest way to get to know and understand and become aware of what I want?
Process of elimination. Start writing down the things you don't want. I know it's so start thinking about the things, what don't I like? What do I totally detest? Right? What would I hand off to somebody if I didn't have to do it? And if you have a business or you're building a business or thinking about starting a business, start that way. Start weeding out the stuff that's going to totally annoy you and frustrate you, and then guess what? As you start doing that, you start getting little insights as to what will give you that emotional motivation or that insight or whatever. It always works. Like I said earlier about the restaurants. What don't you want to eat? Don't want Italian, don't want Japanese, don't want that. Okay, we start winding it down. Well, we only have 2 or 3 left now. Let's see what's left, right? So
interesting. Love it. I'm gonna do that today. I'm gonna write down the things that I don't want, because I write down things that I do want. I don't think I might have done it in the past, but I don't have a list of things that I don't want. So, and I'm gonna write down why I don't want them.
Yeah. And then if you get really annoyed, then it's going to spike your emotions, and you're going to be like, okay, well, but then you should turn it around and say, well, what do I want? Right. Exactly. After you get annoyed enough, right? What do I want? And then you start writing down a new list of things you want. And then, you have to get your emotions evoked because your subconscious mind is an emotional mind. And so we need to get the emotions in this conversation. And so if you just start thinking consciously, you won't. You need to go down to the emotional level.
Love it. I think there's going to be some good development or growth in that exercise, writing down what you don't want and writing down exactly, trying to figure out what you want. And I'm guessing it's a process, and I've done this myself. It's like, if you don't know exactly what you want, it's going to take a bit of time to figure out and come to the conclusion that here is what I want, and make peace with it, and then start chasing it.
Yeah. Well, you can do things. You can ask, you can get, like I can get my client, or I get my clients to write down the things they don't want. And then I'll get in a conversation with them and record it. And I'll get them to close their eyes, and I'll say, what do you want? They'll tell me, and I'll say, what do you really want? And I'll keep asking what you want until they can't say anything else. And then they have now the emotional stuff that they got down to the lower level, the emotional state, and we know what they really want. So
love it. Love it. Love it. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
My 20-year-old self? Well, definitely develop a practice of learning and implementing fast. Like, go and learn things, implement it, test it, fail fast. It's better to fail fast. Like, jump on that bike, crash a few times, get back on, right? Until you start figuring it out. I mean, if you had to get on the bike as an urgency, because you needed to go and get somewhere, you'd figure it out. You'd fail fast, wouldn't you? You'd be like, I need to get to medical help now because my mother fell down and is hurt in my house, and I don't have a phone or whatever, right? Or no service. You'd figure out how to ride that bike really fast, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So fail fast, right? Go out and do it and struggle, right? Take the heat.
Love it. If people have a fear of failure, what advice would you give them? They're like, you say fail fast, and they have that fear of, oh, I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look bad. I don't want to embarrass myself. What would you tell them? How would you help them overcome?
Well, the way I explain it is, think of fear as a 2-year-old child, and you need to get some groceries, and the 2-year-old child is freaking out, screaming and crying, and you're like, and then you have this, this thought about, I can't take that child into the store like this. But guess what? You do. You take them with you. You go in there and they're screaming, yelling, freaking out. Like, I got to buy groceries. Sorry, everybody. Hungry. Right? So you take them with you. So fear needs to be taken with us. Why? It's only one of 5 emotions. What do we have? Fear, disgust, anger, sadness, joy. The only one we want is joy. but we got to go through fear or some of the other ones to get there. The other thing, and I can't explain this all now, but Tim Ferriss had a great resource and tool for identifying your fears. Basically writing down what your fears are, and then figuring out, what's the worst case scenario, and then you start actually minimizing what that fear is all about, right? And you minimize it, and you end up going through it. You have to go through fear. There's no question about it. You don't go through fear, you stay the same, or you shrink back to a lower level of yourself.
Yeah.
So, I know it's not everybody can go through fear, but if you develop the thick skin and you can take the heat and go through it a little bit, then you get stronger and stronger and stronger. And then when something really fearful comes up, you just do it.
Like, oh yeah. I really like that exercise of writing out your fears and then figuring out what actually is the worst case scenario. And most of the time it's not a big deal, right? And we make up all this big story in our head, right? That has this very tiny chance of happening. And then we write it down. We actually, I've done this where I'm like, what's the big problem here? And I can't even explain the problem. I'm like, and what the hell are you worried about? Right? So a lot of times wow, you shared a lot of good tips here in this episode. Dan, I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. For those of you who didn't get a chance to get access to Dan's gift here, the productivity system that Dan is sharing, let me see if I can show it on the screen. Go to lefavcoaching.com/focus days. Get access to Dan's focused productivity system, which he has developed, and reach out to Dan. Obviously, he knows what he's talking about. He is an ocean of wisdom with practice and a system to follow through and have a conversation. Dan, is there anything that you'd like to add that we didn't talk about before we wrap up?
Well, nothing additional, but the fact that you showed up here today to listen, and you're listening in and you're gathering information. If there's something that struck you and you thought that's doable, I can do it, write it down, put it into your calendar, and get working on it. Just take one little thing and do it, because I've talked a lot about a lot of different things. You can do all sorts of things, but that's just going to be a lot of confusion. So just take one thing today and take a step doing that. And after you figured it out and got some results and you feel good, do something else. But just one thing, that's all. Because you know what? Like we were talking about earlier, there's too much distraction, right? And you need comprehension, so you need to take some action doing something. So just do something easy, doable, manageable, and then look for results from that. And then go on to the next thing. There's always something pulling us forward and something pushing us. The thing that pushes us is the fear of the thing that happened before that we hate, the financial crisis or whatever, right? The hardships. And then there's the thing that pulling us, the life, the freedom, So anyway, that said, just take one thing and do it. And
just
then
one thing, just one thing, and just get it started.
That's right.
That's a great advice. It's like, if you need to write a book, if you need to write an article, do so, just write the first sentence, do one thing. That's right. Wow, this is amazing. Dan, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Gang, if you're watching or listening, if you have any questions for Dan, pop them as a comment in the chat box, and we'll get back to you. Do reach out to Dan, download and get access to the Focus Productivity System, and we'll go from there. Now, again, as usual, if you're watching or listening, make sure you like the show, subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube or other channels. Subscribe to our podcast, comment, tag a friend who could benefit from this conversation, who could benefit from Dan's productivity system. And if you have any questions, put them in there. And anything else? No, that's it for me. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mustafa Hosseini. You're watching and listening to Daily Confidence for Entrepreneurs. I'll look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Bye now.